Now let's get started with our presentation, and it is my great pleasure to introduce my colleague and today's speaker, Brenda Ice, who is the Senior Associate Dean and Senior Director of Residential Life. Dean Ice joined us this past September as the inaugural Senior Associate Dean and Senior Director of Residential Life. She leads an expanded and redesigned professional staff organization and oversees the development of a shared coordinated set of structures, practices, and outcomes to support undergraduate student experience of inclusive communities that promote wellness, growth, and development with a greater connection to the curricular and co-curricular experience here at Brown. Dean Ice has served in a variety of leadership roles in higher education for over 25 years. Prior to Brown, Brenda served as the Assistant Dean, Director of Campus Life at Scripps College in California, and Assistant Dean of Students at the University of California, Riverside. She's worked also at Colgate University, Towson University, Wilkes University, and Salisbury University. And she has a background in informational technology, having served as Director of Telecommunications at Salisbury University for 8 years before pursuing her career in student affairs. I think I can speak to everyone here in the Division of Campus Life to say we feel very grateful for Dean Ice joining our team. And without further ado, I will send it to you, Brenda, to provide more details to our families.
Thank you, Mikkel. It's always interesting when people talk about me in this kind of bio format, and I realize how long I've been doing this. And it's always new and exciting. And after I hear it, I become that much more energized about the work that I will be able to do, particularly here for your students at Brown. So I did prepare, in thinking about some of the questions that you have created for us, a bit of a slide deck. And so I'm hopeful that in these next few slides, I can attend to many of the general questions that come up, but certainly have created enough space for us to ask any additional questions that may come up as a result of my presentation or just general inquiry that you have. So as Mikkel indicated, I am Brenda Ice, and I am the inaugural Senior Associate Dean and Senior Director of Residential Life. I'm excited to join the Brown community for a multitude of reasons, but more importantly is that I've committed to Brown because they've committed to us in residential life. And one of the next slide that I want to talk about is what that level of commitment looks like. In the past year, this department has been highly resourced to be able to expand our staffing model such that we have grown from a team of 12 that once we fill this vacant position that you see here, we will be at 36 professional staff members, plus another 120 student leaders in support of our overall residential student experience. And that is a lot. And to know that a campus is committed that deeply and invested in the residential student experience should bring you as families some level of calm and knowing that they will be in capable and supportive hands during their residential student experience with us. I just wanted to take a brief moment to at least identify members of my leadership team that serve in our residential life program. And these become your points of contact moving forward when you think about the kind of overarching experience that your students are going to have. Res Life is comprised of two major areas, our residential education team and our residential operations team. We have 3 directors that support our residential education team because we've designed them based off their living environment and the type of experiences that will be specific to those populations. Sean Thompson is our director of first year experiences and our housing community. A point of note here, while our focus today is on residential life, Sean Thompson also serves as our overseer of our orientation program. So orientation is under the umbrella of residential life, but for the purposes of today's conversation, we will focus on the residential life experience. And I can put you in contact with Sean and or direct you to their website for additional conversation specific to the orientation of new students. Terrence Sanders serves as our Director of Program Greek and Theme Houses. in our year that I've been here, in less than a year, we have assumed responsibility of our specialized and targeted communities that once were supported by student activities. Because they had a housing component, it was naturally assumed that our residential life side and that director would oversee our fraternity and sorority affairs, and then our Greek and program themes. A quick distinction is that our program communities are those that are designed and integrated in part by student interest. And those sometimes come from recognized student clubs and organizations, and then they spin off, or it just is generally a group of students wish to create something different in our residential buildings and create a program. Our theme communities are designed in sponsorship with campus partners. And so those can either be an exact or direct department or a academic department. And in those models, we work very closely with those leaders in those various areas to create a type of experience for all students to participate in. A point of clarification here is that our program Greek and theme houses are not necessarily available to our new first-year students in their first year, but certainly we can talk about those as a greater integration and learning more about them so that you're that much more prepared when you enter into them in your second year. And then wrapping up or rounding out our residential education experience is Scott Helfrich, who serves as our director of upper division houses. And Scott really is the overseer of our areas that don't fall under one of those two umbrellas of our first year population or under our Greek program and theme communities. We also have assumed responsibility and support of our off-campus student population under our upper division community by creating opportunities to prepare our students for independent living when they move into the greater Providence area. On the residential operations side, you will see vacancy, but I'm hopeful that by the end of this month, I'll be able to formally announce a new director of our residential operations and strategic planning. Their role is really about the operational administrative side of residential life. So this is the group that oversees our housing assignments, that integrates and works closely with our facilities management team, with custodial and maintenance, thinking about our new construction efforts, our renewal efforts of our existing housing. We won't always have funding to support new construction, but what can we be doing to partner with our capital planning team to renovate and renew our existing communities that exist in our housing. And then all other things related to that from a billing perspective, what we do during break periods, and all other things that don't necessarily fall under the bucket of the education side would fall to our director here in residential operations. Next. We have a lot of people in our department, and I could spend an entire webinar just talking about our team. But I think what will be critical given today's conversation and you as parents and students coming into this community is to focus on two key positions that I think are going to be instrumental in the overall residential student experience for our new students coming in. And that is our community coordinator and our area coordinator. So when we think nationally, our program, the RA program, if you will, we actually use a different moniker and we call them community coordinators. And we're intentional with the language of community because that's what we want these peer educators to do, is to build a sense of community, belonging, and welcoming environment for all students, regardless of their class status with us. Is that we tend to nationally promote and support a new student experience. And then after that, we assume students kind of figure things out. But in this model, our community coordinators are supportive of all student experiences because they're all trained at the same level. And so the idea is that you all learn and support based off those needs, and then you have specialties based off your individual placement. But they are designed to serve as role models and kind of the leader amongst their peers in these residential communities. They're placed appropriately based off the size and population of our various buildings, of which we have 47, soon to be 48. And so there, you may have one in one building that has a smaller population, upwards of 6 if it's a larger community that support the overall student experience. Their main focus, among other things, is really about creating relationships with their residents, but more importantly, finding ways that they can actually connect residents to one another. They're going to help students establish these kind of social networks and not necessarily social media. We want to emphasize that we want to create and really find our grounding in interpersonal dialogue and connection. And so how do we get students to talk to roommates and then talk to hallmates, talk to people in the building, and then start to build a community within the building, but more importantly, a community and identity outside of their residential student experience. And because our community coordinators have lived on campus for at least a year, they have some level of exposure to those opportunities that we certainly want them to then transfer to our new students in residence with us. And then because they're living amongst their peers, they have the ability to very quickly identify any community concerns that are raised just simply based off of their interactions with students, or when students directly come to them and say, I have a problem, I have an issue, I want to come to you to be that level of support. In addition to our community coordinators who are undergraduate students living with students, we also have 12 area coordinators who are live-in master's level student affairs practitioners also living in the buildings. Now there, because we have 12, we obviously don't have enough for every building, but they're given a particular community or area of buildings to supervise and manage. They're also living in residence. We like to call them the adult or the additional elevated presence of our department in those spaces to support our students. They will supervise our community coordinators, but more importantly, they create a different presence. And so we want students to know that they have a multitude of resources available to them, but in the moment that we want them to recognize and rely on their community coordinator and their area coordinator as challenges are presented to them. And oftentimes we focus on the challenges or concerns that might be happening. We also want them to seek them out when they want to champion and highlight the good things happening in their life, that they did well on a midterm, or want to celebrate with someone about an upcoming recognition or certificate that they might have received. By creating this kind of boundary where they are present in the spaces with our students, we hope can create this kind of familiarity with our department as an added resource. New this year, and I'm hoping that it continues, is that every one of our area coordinators also serve as academic advisors to first-year students. And so they'll be given a small cohort of where they will serve as both a advisor, kind of guiding them through their academic journey, while also serving as a broader campus life and residential life advisor in their experience. Next slide. And so you may ask yourself, well, that's a lot, and that's lots of people doing those things, but how do they actually accomplish this lofty idea of building community and creating a sense of belonging? We ground ourselves in residential life in 4 basic principles or pillars: inclusive community, growth and development, health and well-being, and operational excellence. And when we ground ourselves in those fundamentally, the programs, the ways we interact with our students, and the way in which we will train our community coordinators and our area coordinators to interact with our students will always fall under one of those particular foundational groundings. We will do that by creating programs, activities, events, passive or even active, with some of these kind of smaller bubbles at the bottom of the slide that you see here. So I won't go through all of them, but imagine our community coordinator has done a poll of their student interest on their particular floor, and they said that they would like to learn more about what it would mean to engage with athletics. That many of the students on the floor aren't student athletes, but they would love to be able to learn more about a particular sport or engage and participate in attending a game. Then that community coordinator would figure out how to develop a program around that and get them excited to participate and or show up or learn more about those opportunities. Maybe it doesn't turn in them to becoming a varsity athlete, but maybe it's an opportunity of renewed or resparked interest that they played soccer when they were much younger and now want to do that recreationally. We're creating those levels of exposure for them. Likewise, from a co-curricular standpoint, if students say that they have interest in an academic sort of way, that they're thinking about tutoring opportunities or resources available to them in their preferred or major yet to be determined, our community coordinators and area coordinators are also well equipped to know what other resources exist to either create a program or at least guide them to those particular programs and resources outside the work of residential life. And those are just some ways of which we will enhance the residential student experience through programming, presence, and levels of engagement. Next slide. What tends to show up in lots of our questions is, but what about? And when will I know? And what's due? And how do we get this information? So I want to just highlight really quickly that we have already submitted, or excuse me, shared with new students the housing questionnaire. And it's intentionally labeled the new student questionnaire because it captures both our first year community and our new transfers joining us. And this questionnaire is designed to get some base level information about study habits, sleep habits, the cleanliness of rooms, how they plan to kind of socialize and enjoy their residential student experience while here at Brown. And then it also gives them an opportunity to maybe talk very specifically about some targeted interest opportunities that we have. So we have substance-free, single gendered living, gender inclusive opportunities. Students have the ability to indicate that they have a accessibility accommodation request, if they have a religious request. And so we give this questionnaire an opportunity for all students to fill that out, and we use the information provided to us to then make the appropriate assignments. That actually closed on July 1, but it is still available to students as needed if they missed that deadline. We captured a small group that missed it and resent that out to students. And so if you know your student is one of those, this is the gentle nudge that I can tell you, you can remind them to make sure they get it in so that we can appropriately pair and place them. As new students come off of our wait list, our deadline is passed, but we're certainly continuing to reinforce and make that housing questionnaire available to them. The housing accommodations priority deadline has also passed, but it has not closed. And at any point during a student's career here at Brown, they have the ability to submit documentation in support of an accommodation, whether it be academic or housing. Particularly for our need, the sooner you can get that information in, the better we have, the better opportunity we have to actually place you based off of those needs for housing. As I've shared that we have all of these multitude of special interest communities, we will actually start notifying students of their housing placement as early as July 25th, but no later than August 10th. And that range is intentional because we do some pre-placement before we do the general student placement. And so the week of July 25th will be our notification of any students who have approved housing accommodations or have submitted interest in for religious request or some of our other specialized communities that where we have pre-identified where those locations exist. And so we want to make sure that those students are assigned and accept that placement before we move into the general placement of all other students. As soon as that's complete, no later than August 10th, all students should have received their housing assignment for the upcoming fall semester. Move-in arrival for new students is August 31st. Orientation for first year and new students is September 1st. And so August 31st is really designed as just that: move in, get settled, and start to kind of feel out your surroundings. And we'll provide more details when you receive your housing assignment that lays out our arrival process. We will have more details about when you can arrive, what that arrival will look like, and more importantly, the level of engagement our office will have in supporting you through that arrival process. We also recognize that there are folks that will arrive well before the 31st because they are sponsored either as part of one of our pre-orientation experiences or are identified as a student athlete and need to return early for fall training and practice season. And so those are just some quick highlights there about our key dates and information. Next slide. And this is my last slide before I will stop and we'll take any questions, is that that's a lot of information. And so we know that things can be kind of put upon you, overwhelming webinars, lots of emails. If at any point during your time between now and you arrive, or even post arrival, you have any questions, I want to be that contact for you. So I'm giving you my direct contact information. I can certainly respond as appropriate, or more importantly, redistribute it to the appropriate resources as they make their way. You can also send general inquiries to Res Life, and that's res_life@brown.edu. And then, as I said before, Res Life or orientation is part of Res Life, but new student orientation has its own email address of where you can send direct questions there. If you're physically on campus or located in Grad Center E, the physical address is 42 Charlesfield, but our mailing address is listed there. And yes, students will also get information about their mailing address as well when they receive their housing assignments in the coming weeks. We can stop there with the slide deck presentation, and hope that you found that useful to kind of get us going as we move into any general questions that you may have that I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. We have lots of questions, and we have some questions that came in earlier. So I'll start with those, give you a chance to take a drink of water and catch your breath. So one of the questions is really about the campus and the buildings on campus. There's a variety of different residence halls. Are new students all grouped together, or are they assigned throughout the campus?
Yes, so thank you for that. I do believe Mikkel has provided you with the direct website to Res Life, and there you can find the specific buildings that I am going to kind of rattle off rather quickly for you. But what we do in our program is to intentionally congregate first-year students in one location or building. And so as you get your assignments, you'll notice that you'll have a specific assignment of, say, Andrews, or Everett, Poland, or Morris, or things of that nature. Those are intentionally centralized in our first year community. And so you will be, as a first-time first year, living amongst others who are also first-time first years. And centralized in our Keeney quad. That's also another phrase that you'll hear. And so there's no Keeney building, but it's a quad area where many of our first year communities are located. And then we have another community on in our north and south communities that also house our first year communities. What we are intentional is doing is that we will pair by class in the room, but there is the possibility in some of our other buildings that aren't centrally located for first years that you may be integrated with sophomores. But that would be probably the extent of that. Our junior and senior integration into first year communities typically only show up when they are a student leader or living in the space because of a accommodation, and that building happens to have that location that meets their particular need. So we are intentionally trying to centralize the living of our first year students. Any new students who are classified as transfers, who aren't identified as first years, are, as best we can, congregated again in an age appropriate or classification as best we can get it. So sophomore identities coming in as transfers will likely then be paired either with other transfer sophomores or existing sophomores that have vacancies in their shared living environment. Transfer students who are juniors have the ability and are likely placed in our upper division communities, or even in some of our program and theme communities if space becomes available, even if there wasn't an expressed interest in perhaps joining those communities. Oh,
thank you, Brenda.
yes.
So we've had a lot of questions come in about what is in the room, and there's specific questions about mini fridges, microwaves. I'm going to put the link in the chat that says, what to bring. But if you could talk a little bit more about what's already in the room and what's allowed, that'd be great.
Sure. So the what to pack and what to bring is going to be essential, and I'm going to encourage everyone to look at it and look at it again and look at it again before you actually get on the road and join us. From an amenities and outfitting and layout, the rooms vary based off the building that you're in, but every standard room that our students will occupy has a bed, and it is a twin size bed with a kind of extra long mattress. And so I think it's important here to say is that the twin size sheets will cover those. But if you tend to put anything underneath of it, if you're looking for levels of comfort and those kind of softeners and egg crates, then you're going to want to make sure that you intentionally buy the extra long sheets. And that's just that's me as a parent and me as a practitioner, making sure you buy the right thing before you go out. So every student is equipped with a bed, that has a desk and desk chair, a dresser, and that's usually 2 or 3 drawers depending upon it, and a closet and or armoire or wardrobe. And so the closet exists. When a closet exists, the wardrobe does not, because that's the kind of ample space for the particular student, appropriately based off the size of the room. In instances where there are no closets or there are more than one individual in that particular space, then the wardrobe does in fact exist for that student. And then each room is equipped with a micro fridge. And a micro fridge, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, is a 1-unit device that is both a refrigerator and a microwave. And it actually creates a energy source and comes with a sustainable piece of equipment that we utilize, that when the refrigerator is in use, the microwave is off. When the microwave is in use, the refrigerator is off. And so it allows for us to have a more equitable and sustainable resource in our buildings, and doesn't necessarily pull on all of our electrical outlets during that time period.
All right, thank you, Brenda. And it's my understanding too that there are some organized shopping trips for students once they arrive as well. So if there's something they've forgotten, they can always have access to it.
Correct.
Great. Another theme that I'm seeing in a lot of the questions is on roommates. How can you ensure students will receive a good or ideal roommate? And then what happens when it doesn't work out?
Sure. So I think good and ideal are relative. I think what we have to be able to ensure is that students who've already filled out this housing questionnaire did so honestly and not aspirationally. And so oftentimes we find ourselves students completing forms thinking about who I want to be or how I plan to reinvent myself. And if you are a neat and tidy person in your current existence, we make assumptions that you will likely continue to be neat and tidy in your collegiate experience. But if you are that messy kind of, it's there and I'll find it as I need it, and you aspire to be neat, that's where, if you filled out that questionnaire, we tend to kind of get those conflicts. But what we use, and that's why we ask the questions the way we do in the questionnaire, to really get at your lifestyle habits, how you plan to utilize the room, when you will rise, when you go to sleep, how you would integrate with other or interact with other students. Are you going to create your room as a social gathering, or is it really the only place you sleep and you're doing all your other socialization elsewhere? We will take that and develop then the appropriate pairing. When we can ensure that the students have done their part in providing us with the most accurate questionnaire, we tend to get it right. But when we get it wrong, we create opportunities again after the placements are made to allow students to fill out a roommate agreement. And so we will allow you to get to campus and settle in, give you this kind of honeymoon period of the first week of really just settling into your environment. We will then have our community coordinators and or area coordinators then create this roommate agreement, where you're now going to sit and say, I've been here a week or two. I now know a little bit more about who I am and how I plan to show up. And now I can engage in more detailed conversation about my true sleep habits. And now that I know I want to be a part of this club sport, I am going to need to get up earlier or stay late or utilize the space differently. And that your roommate agreement is then what we will go back to throughout the academic year if issues arise. In most instances, we're hopeful that we can come back to that document, revise as needed, and get people to kind of continue to live in the space that they're assigned. In instances where a mediation is needed, our area coordinators, those professional staff that live in, are going to step in and have those conversations with students. Again, to figure out if it is just really a kind of a crosstalk and we're all saying the same thing and just not hearing one another, that we might be able to continue to live in the same room together. In instances where that's not the case, we do have a process in place where we could entertain a possible room change, either mutual with a friend down the hall or as space becomes available. throughout the semester.
Thanks, Brenda. So along similar lines, what can students and families do now to prepare for their first year at Brown?
Sure. So I think from a student perspective is to, as best you can, put aside the preconceived notion of what it means to come to college. I think for many of us, it's based off of social media presence or what they've seen in entertainment. Is this what your first year is supposed to be like? And even to some degree, the anecdotal things you'll hear about, here's what happens at Brown. And really develop your experience for yourself. The experiences that you're hearing from others is just that, it's their experience. I would encourage you to think about how you want to Brown and create your own experience. You may find that it aligns with what you've heard from others, but I'm optimistic that you might then chart your own path and create exactly what it is you know you need, as opposed to what you assume you need based off what other people have shared with you. From a family perspective, I think now, between now and even after you get the assignments and arrival, is really thinking about how you plan to remain engaged with your student and their student experience. I always like to remind families that this is as much your first time at college as it is your students. And so talk openly about what that's going to mean, how often you're going to communicate with your student, what it's going to mean if the student doesn't call you back right away. And that probably doesn't mean a contact to me to say, can you go find my student and let me know they're doing okay, but have those realistic conversations about that level of presence. Figuring out to what extent you want to be engaged with the broader Brown community. And this is where I will do the shameless plug of connecting back with Mikkel as part of our family and parent relations. There are wonderful ways of which you can be connected to Brown without being in the business of your students' Brown experience and still feel like you are connected that way. So those are the things I would encourage you to actually start having conversations now and not necessarily make it a car ride trip discussion and kind of flesh out those details. We continue to be a resource for students, but I also want to make sure that we can extend that to you as parents and families, that as you are also going through this, by all means, call us and ask, what does it mean when my student says this? Or is there really nothing to do on campus? And how am I going to get my student engaged? We are as willing to have conversations with students or with families as we are with our students.
Brenda, there are a lot of questions in the chat that are, they're very detailed in terms of, what's in the room, what's the dimension of the room, where is my student's room? I guess, what is the information that's going to be provided in advance, and what is going to be something that they're just going to learn about when they get to campus?
Sure. So the actual floor plans and layouts of the spaces are already available on our website. So if you would go to the link that Mikkel has provided in the chat, but it's reslife.brown.edu, you can get to our page that actually is in partnership with FM, who oversees all floor plans of all buildings, not necessarily that exclusively our residential spaces. I'm going to tell you now that they aren't to scale. And so to not necessarily view a room and see that that box is slightly bigger than the box next to it doesn't necessarily mean or equate to the room being bigger. And so you may not find that the dimensions exist in those particular spaces. Our buildings, we have 47 of them, are uniquely different. And so it doesn't behoove us to kind of share, this is a dimension of what a single looks like, and this is what a double or a multi-occupancy room looks like, because they vary so differently based off those buildings. But that would be centrally where you could find that in advance. Once you receive your housing assignment, we will provide in that notification additional details about what you need to know about that building, but more importantly, shifting to talk about the experience you're going to have. So we're going to connect you to know who that area coordinator is going to be for your area, who your assigned community coordinators might be, how that might then link to the orientation experience and what those neighborhoods and communities would look like that way. So some of it is available now for you to look at. Others will be provided once you receive your assignment with greater detail. Some of those, I will just add in the link that is on our website. Some of it does come with photos of some of the rooms, but not all of the rooms. So one of the things we are working to create in our next iteration, not only for new students, but in our general housing selection process in your next year, is to have more a more diverse and expansive photo gallery of all of those particular spaces, so you can start to get a better sense of what it means to live in one of these particular buildings.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. And I know your team is hard at work on a lot of those initiatives. We have a lot of questions about laundry service, and I'm going to chat the link that's linked to the Brown Card website. Questions like where's the laundry located? What, does it take coins? Just a little bit on how laundry works at Residential Life.
Yes. So laundry, our laundry contract is actually a new one. And I'm excited to indicate that in this new iteration of our contract with the laundry vendor, that all residence halls will receive new equipment. And so that installation is actually happening this summer. And so even though you may be moving into one of our historic buildings, the outfitting of our new residential laundry machines will all be new and or newer. The only exception is that of our wellness community that just was opened up this past fall, and so already has new equipment installed. But the idea is that everyone is going to get a kind of upgrade in the type of machine that's being offered. We will move away from coin operated and actually move to the card. And so the link that Mikkel has provided will allow you to load money on your card and just simply be able to swipe for access to the attached machine. The rate is about $3, and we'll confirm that in the communication, but that's for a full cycle of wash and dry. So $150 for wash, $150 for dry is typically what our students are spending in laundry service. The location of the buildings varies because of the uniqueness of our residential spaces. Many of them are in the lower level or basement level of the spaces. And some of our buildings that are heavily populated by students, we have them on every floor to manage the crowding or space that might exist. In the floor plans, you will be able to see where the laundry room is identified. But one of the first things we do as part of our first floor meeting with your community coordinator is identify some of those key locations. So in addition to knowing where the laundry room is, we'll also tell you where our community kitchens are and the lounge spaces and the places that you can also gather outside of your residential living space.
Thank you. Another question is about substance-free dorms. Since most students who live in the residence halls are under 21, is everything technically substance-free?
Everything is technically substance-free because there is that expectation that there is a law that mandates how old you have to be. But in our substance-free special interest inquiry, that is actually congregating a group of students who are looking for something different outside of the assumption that everything is. And we will intentionally place you with students who want to live a certain lifestyle and do not want the additional implications that come from those that choose to partake in a variety of different substances or have a different residential student experience with that. And so that is part of the reason why we asked that in our housing questionnaire, is to get a sense of how many students would actually want that as a living community. And then based off that interest, we then appropriately place them in buildings around campus that would support that. The community coordinator is then notified this is a floor or wing or an area of students that have chosen a substance-free lifestyle and community, and then programming is supported appropriately. There's also an additional expectation put upon those students beyond the roommate agreement that there's a community agreement about what it means to live and honor that substance-free lifestyle.
Great, thank you. A lot of questions about shipping things ahead of move-in. Is this something people can do? If so, how do they go about doing that?
Yes, and so this is in partnership with another department outside of residential life, and we continue to work and figure out what makes the most sense. Part of the pre-shipping was halted under COVID regulations, and so we're now re-examining what that protocol and practice would be. If shipping, and to the extent that you have the ability to do so, will in fact be communicated in your assignment, which means that there would be no pre-arrival for any of those items before that particular assignment notification went out, no later than August 10th. But if we do provide that, that would be completely laid out in your housing assignment notification that would go to you depending on the day of which you receive that communication.
Thank you, Brenda. All right, so next question. What are some of the resources, additional resources that are available to help students acclimate to Brown?
Sure. So we continue to reinforce and push that your community coordinator should really be your main source. They're going to live with you and kind of connect with you and or your student in this particular model. They go through an extensive training with our office to know what all of those additional resources are and connect the students to it. But beyond the world of residential life, our campus life division has a multitude of student support and resources when we think about case management. And so the work and support that students are going to have outside of the classroom is usually filtered through our student support services office, the case management team. We have our student activities and organizations office that will get students connected depending on an interest, with over 400, I do believe, different clubs and organizations, including fraternity and sorority opportunities. There is something for everyone to kind of participate and have that as a particular resource. Other campus partners within the campus life division that serve as resources would be our health and wellness division. So we think about our counseling and support services for students who either want to proactively get into counseling and find ways to kind of navigate their experiences, to also being reactionary, that if they're in need of an emergent issue, that we have counseling services available to them 24/7. We have our own health and wellness, our own student health services and pharmacy on campus. And so students have access to those resources. And so if they already have medications and prescriptions through another family doctor, that can be transferred here to Brown as another resource, and you don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel and start a new process and practice with us. In addition to CAPS and our student health services, we have a Be Well or health promotion initiative that also fundamentally gets students to think holistically about their overall experience. We also want to identify that while that exists in one of our specific buildings at 450 Brook Street, Stern Lake Commons, health and well-being exists all throughout our campus and not necessarily focused in one residential space. And then we have our campus safety, our public safety office that supports as a resource. Our dean of the college also serve as added resources. In the chat, I do believe you're going to get a link to some of those campus life and resources. But again, when our students get to campus, we will create very active and even passive programmings. Bulletin boards, you'll notice, will include key phone numbers and contact points for students to have. All of their Brown IDs have key information and phone numbers on the back of their card for students if they find themselves in emergent or emergency crisis, that there is a list of phone numbers, including our administrator on call, which is a 24/7, but basically an after-hours service that we provide to students. When the business operations of the day close, we still have professionals on call to support students as they needed. Added bonus, our area coordinators who live in residence serve as the first point of contact and tier 1 for all of our AOC protocols.
Thanks, Brenda. I've been trying to keep up with you with the links in the chat, but if there's anything I've forgotten, I will add that in there, or feel free to add in there. A lot of questions about area coordinators and community coordinators. Can you talk about the training that community coordinators are receiving?
Sure. So we did our recruitment in the spring, and they'll be joining us in about 3 weeks in August, and we will go through a 10-day training. The training is twofold. One is that we recognize that they're coming in as returning students, and so they have some level of understanding of the resources available to them. We don't assume that they know everything, so we spend a great deal of time during that 10-day period emphasizing what those resources are. How do you move a student from this conversation to this resource? So much of our training is tabletop conversations. And so we provide scenarios. We've moved away from kind of the behind closed doors and taking them through a room and interacting it, and really just talking amongst ourselves as team in these tabletop exercises. When a student says this, when there's a roommate conflict, what do you do? What are the resources that you can provide? We internally in our residential life team can provide some of that training, but this is where we actually partner with that actual office and have them come in and provide that level of training. And so when we talk about mental health and crisis, it is not singularly interacting with our CAPS or counseling office. It's a combination of CAPS and our health promotions team, or even our student support services. And so we're kind of bringing all of those partners in as part of that training. The other portion of our training is really about them building a team dynamic so that they then have themselves as an added resource when they are presented with challenges that show up with their residents. And so in that 10-day period, our area coordinators are facilitating many of those conversations. Campus partners are facilitating the conversation. Our directors and even I show up occasionally to facilitate some of those conversations. The key to all of this is while there are 10 days of training, training doesn't end simply because your student has arrived. We continue to have ongoing training. We have weekly staff meetings, and once a month we will bring the entire team together and do in-services and opportunities to re-engage. So if we discover that there's something that was missed or a new trend or event is happening residentially that we want to make sure our team is aware of, we will provide that during our ongoing staff meetings so that they are continuously updating their training, their skills to best support our residential students.
Thank you, Brenda. We have a question about, are all first year students moving in on August 31st?
That would be in theory what we hope, but we also know that many of our first year students are going to sign up for pre-orientation opportunities or have already been pre-identified as varsity student athletes. And so they will arrive earlier based off those particular programs. But the majority of those students who aren't sponsored under one of those two buckets will arrive on the 31st. When you receive your assignment housing notification, embedded in that will be instructions of how you can actually schedule your arrival. We will give you the opportunity to actually block in when you plan to arrive such that we are that much more prepared and can stagger our arrival points and not have everyone congregate on College Hill all at once. And so that will be part of that particular process, which is why there's nothing else happening on the 31st except the move-in experience, and give you the day to truly get in, get settled, and become familiar with your home away from home.
Thank you. And I'll add that the parent orientation piece of that doesn't happen until 6 o'clock at night. That's a nice reception. It's definitely not mandatory. If you'd rather go to a restaurant with your student for your last evening in Providence, that's perfectly okay. So it's not going to interfere with that process. A lot of questions about kitchen facilities. Can you talk a little bit about what those look like inside the dorms?
Sure. So particularly in our areas where we're going to congregate our first year community, there are communal kitchens that exist, and they're spaced all throughout the building. Some buildings have more than one, some have one. Again, it's all based off the total population that or the occupancy of those particular buildings. But these are full-size kitchens, and so it gives the ability for a functioning stove, for a food prep, a full refrigerator for communal sharing and use, counter space, cabinet space, and then a repository for trash, and even in some locations, a program and initiative with our sustainability department about composting. And so all of those things exist in some or all of those, the composting particularly in some or of our residential spaces, but every building does have at least communal access to the kitchen. It doesn't require students to reserve it or kind of book the room. It is available and accessible at any point. You, as a new student, first and second year, there is a dining requirement, and so you will need to be on a meal plan, but you're not always going to eat during those regular periods, and so the communal kitchen gives you that flexibility to make those kind of off meals or something familiar, a recipe you receive from home that you just want to make to kind of remind yourself about your surroundings. That's what's available. Our upper class students in our upper division housing do have some flexibility with their dining plans. And so therefore we move away from communal kitchens to more in-suite. And so that's where you'll see some apartment style living that actually has kitchen equipment and or utilization embedded in those suites and apartments.
Great, thank you. A question about the keys to the dorms. Are they traditional keys or swipe cards?
We offer both. We will continue to advance technology, and maybe one day we will get to one card that does both, but students will be issued a brown ID that gives them card access into the building and then a hard key for their actual room assignment.
Great, thank you. We still have a lot of questions, but I think we have to get to a wrap up point. So first, my last question to you, Brenda, is what advice do you have for a new student coming to Brown and their parents and their families?
Sure. Breathe deeply and often. This is not something you need to accomplish the first day you arrive. Acclimation takes time. And so come to Brown on that first day with an open mind and open heart of just wanting to take it all in, but know that you don't have to know it all after that first day. That right is relative. What's right for you is not necessarily the same definition of your roommate or the people that live around you. Find a way to kind of define it for yourself. I think what I would offer as advice to families is to embrace the distance, that there is a moment where you will learn to appreciate that your student is away, but supported by us. And that you are leaving your students in very capable and supportive hands. Our team have done this for a number of years. We have gone through the training, we have the degrees, we have the certifications to say we know how to create the student development experience. Trust in that particular process, but also hold us accountable. So when you feel like we haven't gotten it quite right or right for your student, call and ask us. We'd much rather engage in a dialogue and conversation with you than for there to be assumptions that the needs of you and your students aren't necessarily being met. And lastly, raise your hand and ask the questions. There is no such thing as a dumb question or you probably already answered it. I would much rather answer a question 100 times than you assume something that isn't actually accurate or aren't necessarily feeling heard.
Thank you, Brenda. And just finally, if people want to get in contact with Residential Life, can you remind them of that email address?
Sure. The general inquiries ResLife account is res_life. So that's RES_LIFE @brown.edu. If you wish to reach me, it is Brenda_Ice, and that's ICE. Yes, that's very cool, @brown.edu.
All right, Dean Ice. And just quickly for everyone who asked questions about orientation, it is not mandatory. There will be live and recorded sessions on September 1st. We encourage you to attend, but we understand if you are unable to. And I do want to make another note about academic convocation. That is, a lot of people ask, what is that? That is the ceremony when students walk through the Van Wickle gates for the very first time on campus. This ceremony is traditionally just for students. We have seating for students. Parents, of course, are welcome to view it in person, but you do not have to stick around on campus for that ceremony, and you can watch it live stream on our website. More information on all of these items will be coming your way. So at this point, we're at 1 o'clock. We will try and follow up on as many questions that we weren't able to answer, or provide that information in mass communications sent to you directly. And these sessions are going to be recorded, and they will be posted to the Families at Brown website once we have a chance to edit them a little bit and clean them up and make them really nice for you. So with that, I want to say good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, good morning, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Tina Ice.